Well, the new book is called Cryptic Code of the Templars in America, Origins of the Hooked X. And I'm really excited about this book. It's really the fourth in a series of books about the research that I've been working on for the last 20 years that started with the Kensington runestone. And you know, I have to say, it started with the geology. The rock told me it was real, and that led me on this 20-year quest to figure out, you know, who carved it, where did they come from, and why did they come here? And I think this book really sort of comes full circle and explains all of those things. And as part of this whole parallel journey, I call it, has been a personal journey through this research that started with knowing absolutely zero about any of this history. And then Freemasonry came into the picture along the way. And I started studying the craft, and I studied the craft for about 10 years. And based on the evidence, I decided that I wanted to become a Mason. And now that I've been a Mason, I'm going on my 5th year now, I think the world needs more Masons, quite frankly. So one of the things that I've been trying to do is not so much just sing the praises, but expose people to what Freemasonry is all about. Freemasonry and what they advertise is really what it is. It's about taking good men and making better men. And what I love about the best analogy of becoming a Freemason is sitting in, you know, in the lodge of in the East, and that is a rough stone that came out of the quarry that, you know, is symbolic of a person who's beginning their Masonic journey. The basic person is there, they've got good qualities, but they need a little shaping. And Freemasonry is that shaping and making a better person, and eventually them becoming a perfect ashlar, one that's trimmed and square and plumb and ready to go into the temple, if you will, which of course symbolizes society. So the more good people you have, the good stones going into society, into that temple, the better that society will be. And I think that's a beautiful analogy for what Freemasonry is. Tonight I'm going to be talking about an incredible set of documents called the Cremona document, but there's another set of documents that has come to me that are completely separate. They represent a different time in history. They came to me at a different time in my history of working on this work. And then there's a third set of documents I'm going to be writing about that have to do with lost letters of Albert Pike. And these letters have never seen the light of day. The world does not know about them yet. But oh my God, they are going to, and they are going to blow the lid off this story. Brother Pike, he knew a lot more than he was telling people. Stay tuned. Going into my 5th year, I studied Freemasonry for 10 years because of this research. And I wasn't a Mason. But I became convinced by the evidence that this was a good organization. It was something that I wanted to be part of. And I've come to the point now where I believe that the world needs more Masons, especially in this country. I don't know how many of you realize our country was founded by Freemasons, and especially in government. And I'm not going to get political at all, but I will just say this. If we had more Masons in government on both sides of the aisle, I can promise you that we would have a higher percentage of those representatives making decisions in the interest of the greater good than the personal good. I think the Masons in this room know that that's a true thing. We're not perfect, but I think in some ways, I think the country needs to be reminded where we came from, because we kind of lost a little bit of that history. And history is important. And so tonight, I'm going to talk about this history, but I'm going to go way, way back and tell you a story about how this journey of the Templars that eventually founded this nation handed the obligation off to our founding fathers that we hear about all the time, right? They were all Masons. And so I hope you enjoy it. And I will just say that I'm very proud of this, and I wore this tonight. And not that I want to put any pressure on him or anything, but my son Grant is here tonight. And Grant, if you would stand up so they can see you. So this is, Grant and I are taking this trip. Tomorrow we're going to go down to Newport, and then on Saturday morning we're going to see the illumination at the Newport Tower, which is my birthday. So, or as his mother says, the shortest, darkest day of the year. Janet? Coldest also, yeah. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. Okay, are we ready? Yeah. Okay.
I was going to introduce Scott because he's so shy. Now we've done the pre-talk, please.
All right.
Continue and get started.
Thank you, Michael. And, you know, before I get started, I do want to say, Michael, thank you so much for inviting me. This is really an honor and a privilege to come here, and I'm really looking forward to telling you this story. There's a couple other people that it's very important that you meet who are part of this story. You're going to see their pictures. The first one is my good friend David Brody. David, you got to stand up so they can see you. And he deserves... Yeah. Stop it! Don't pick on him. No, I mean, we give Dave a bad time, and believe me, he can dish it out just as good as we can. But David has done a lot of research. We've done a lot of research together. He's written, what, like 75 books now?
How many have you read?
Most of them. Well, anyway, no, he's done great work, and you've written 9 fictional novels that are based on real stuff. So if you haven't checked out Dave Brody books, please do that. And really, the star of this show, this story that I'm about to tell you, is a guy that I've actually known for about 13 years, but I've only really gotten to know him in the last few years. And I'm telling you, this story is going to blow you away. But this is the guy who's really the star of it, and that's Don Rue. So Don, stand up. All right. Well, with all of that, let's get started. So I'm going to talk about a document, and this is that document. We call it the Cremona document. And to the best of our knowledge, and I want to tell you that we've spent many, many years vetting this. And at this point in time, I'm inclined to think that this is probably a real document. And the story is true. We vetted it as far as we can. We have some more work to do, right, Don? But at this point in time, I think things are lining up pretty well. Now, having said that, this is obviously not a 12th century book. That is probably a mid-19th century book, sometime in the 1800s. But understand that Templars, Cistercians, Templars are Cistercian monks, the white monks with the white tunics. They had scriptoriums in their monasteries where the monks, all day long, all they would do is copy down manuscripts and then recopy and recopy. So what we believe this is probably at least a second or third, possibly a 4th generation copy of a 12th century document. Does that make sense? Because some people get into the end here and they go, that doesn't look like it's from the 12th century. It's not. And I think I introduced Don. This is Don and I about a year ago, or no, not even that. That was in the spring, wasn't it? There's no snow. When we filmed an episode of the most recent season of America on Earth, Don and I were at the Newport Tower, and so I introduced Don. You know who he is. He's the really the center of this story. But there's another guy who's very important, who was the center of this story for many years, and that was a colleague of Don's who worked together in a company called Spartan Enterprises. And this is Dr. Bill Jackson. Now, Don, if I cross a line, just go like that. All right. So when I first met Don, and I was trying to understand the work that he did, I said, Don, what do you do? And what he said to me was, we do things with your tax dollars. Spartan Enterprises. And you can use your imagination, and I don't think you can run too far. And that's the kind of stuff that they did. But I will say that I know a lot about the work that they did, and I mean this sincerely. There are people that do stuff for us that never get attention. We never know who they are. They live and do their work and they die, and we never know about them. He's one of those guys. So we owe you a lot of thanks, Don. Thank you for your service. Even though you don't wear a uniform, he does the good work. And this is another guy who did the same thing, Bill Jackson. And I will tell you, these are the only two known photographs that we have, right? And this is when Bill was, what, just getting out of high school, going into college? About that time. And this one is a screen grab that I had from a video that Don had of Bill in 94, 96?
93 or 94.
Okay. And did Bill have a mustache? I don't think he did.
Say again?
He didn't have a mustache, did he?
Yeah, he had a mustache.
Oh, he did?
At that time he did, yeah.
Oh, so that's not a fake mustache. Oh, well, never mind then. I'm glad you're here because I've been telling everybody that was fake. Anyway, so these guys are doing their work, but this goes back to the 1960s now, 68, I believe. And they were young guys, and when they had the weekends off, they liked to do adventurous stuff. And one of the things they like to do is go swimming and scuba diving in the Hudson River, because you guys lived in New York, right? New York City? Whereabouts? In the Bronx?
I lived in Malvern, and Bill at that time was living with his father in the South Bronx.
Okay.
And George Porter was also living in the Bronx.
Okay. And these guys were with you the day that you found this, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, these guys were scuba diving off. You guys ever heard of Bannerman Island? It's actually a tourist spot now. You can go there and look at the ruins, I guess, now of the castle.
Polypel Island.
Pardon?
It's on the maps. It's called Polypel Island.
Polypel Island? I like Bannerman Island better.
Okay.
Anyway, so, and at some point, and I forget, was it in the 50s? When did the munitions blow up and blow everything into the water?
1916, I think.
1916. And what these guys were doing, and I hope you don't get in trouble for me telling you this, what they were scuba diving for were munitions that the Bannerman family used to sell to various governments and entities. And this stuff got blown into the water, and they were going down there scuba diving looking for this stuff so they could sell it and get some money. Well, anyway, Don was on the boat, I think you said, and he looked over on the shore, and he saw this box with a little round ball on it. So he swam over there and grabbed, and there was two of them, right?
Yeah, that's a facsimile.
That's, yeah, it looked like this. This isn't the actual item, but we think it was part of a decorative ornament that was in the flower gardens, that Mrs. Bannerman apparently was a florist, and she was big into gardening and all that. And so Don grabbed these. Well, his buddy, Bill Jackson, his wife was also into gardening, so he gave those two boxes to Bill. A year or two later, about a year and a half later, Bill's son, Mark, was 5 years old, running along in the house, carrying this thing. He tripped, he dropped it, and it broke. And inside were two things. One was a clay tube sealed with beeswax that had a couple scrolls in it. I'm not going to get into those right now. The other thing was this brass seal. And there's some very interesting symbols on this brass seal. I think I have a picture of it. No, I didn't. Anyway, there were some Theban symbols, which is one of the coded scripts that the Templars used to use starting in the 12th century up until I'm not sure when. And on the back, they were able to decipher the Theban, and it said, press this pin here and it'll open. And they opened it, and this little piece right here came out. Inside of it was a bunch of metal brass inserts that had scenes carved on them and words carved on them. One of the words was Ontiora. And I don't want to tell the whole story. It's a fascinating story, but basically he ended up going to France to see a guy, a friend of Dan Spartan's father, a rare book dealer, and he bought an illuminated Bible for his wife, Muriel. He bought a copy of the Constitution of Honorius that had a Theban alphabet in it for decoding the script, and he bought a pamphlet. And I don't remember the name of it, but I know it was published in 1718, and essentially what this pamphlet was about Native American words found in Old English language, or European languages. One of the words in there was Onteora. And the reference for that the citation for that referenced a book called the Cremona Document. Eventually, Bill traced down the descendants of the two authors. And one of them lived in Spain, Benvenuto, or in Italy, right? Benvenuto, who had a copy of the Cremona Document. And Bill went there and he bought it for, what'd you say, $600 and something?
Yeah,
Right.
12,000 lira, which was about $675 then.
12,000 lira, about $675. I want to get my facts straight because he's here. Anyway, so Bill bought the document, and that's when the journey began. Now, this is the first page. Remember, this is a copy of a copy of a copy. And in Latin, it says right here, Veritas vas liberati, the truth will set you free. And some interesting crosses here that are Templar-style crosses. Now, before I go too far, I want to just quickly educate you about this symbol that I have written a book on called the Hooked X. It's found on the Kensington runestone. It's found on the Narragansett runestone, which is down in Rhode Island. It's found on 3 Spirit Pond runestones up in Maine. And all of these I have researched are connected to the Knights Templar and their pre-Columbian voyages to North America. I've also proposed some theories as to what this is. This is a very sacred symbol to the Templars. It's being used for the letter A, or the A sound. But in runic language, which is what these are, this is a Scandinavian runic inscription. This has runes. We don't even know what it says to this day. But it's clearly being used for the letter A. And the scholars have struggled with this for over a century because that's not what the runic symbol looks like. It doesn't look anything like that. But yet, there it is. Of course, instead of being good scientists and admitting we're not sure what that is, they didn't want to look stupid, so they said, oh, it must be a fake, and dismissed it. Not good science. And they were wrong, by the way. But anyway, this also represents the essence of their ideology, which is something called monotheistic dualism, basically believing in a higher power, whatever that power might be to them, male, female, or a combination of both, that has dualistic aspects, the concept of opposites that keep things in balance. Isn't that what we're all trying to achieve in our lives? We should be. But in any case, that was the essence of their ideology. The other thing that it could represent, you'll like this, if you take an X and you chop it in half horizontally, the V represents the male. Is that me? Oh, that's you. It's okay. The peak represents the male, the phallic, the sword, the symbol for the male. Inverted like this is the female, the vessel, the chalice, the womb. And when you combine them together, you have this allegorical union, male, female, heaven and earth, good, bad, light, dark, dualism, right? So, what's the hook? Don't say it. Well, it represents the child. A V, a little girl inside the womb of her mother. Some people say it represents the Holy Trinity. What's the Holy Trinity?
Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, Holy Ghost. What's the Holy Spirit? Don't feel bad because it isn't well defined, is it? I look at it this way. You got the Father, you got the child. Who's missing? Mama, right? Maybe that's what this represents. There is no right or wrong answer. The point is that it's a very important, it's a very sacred symbol, and I have found it in many places, but only in association with the Knights Templar, period. So, I want you to just keep that in mind as we go along. So this is the table of subjects in the Cremona document. And now you're probably saying, well, where is this document now? The document, we don't have it anymore because in 1994, Bill Jackson sold the document after he had gone through this whole story I'm about to tell you and decided that he needed to sell it to a representative with the Vatican. Hold on. You're not going to be disappointed in the end. Bill didn't give them everything. I love Bill. I love Bill. Anyway, what we have are photographs. I should say what Don has are photographs. These are some of those photographs. And there are some original pages still left, but I can either confirm or deny that Don has them. Anyway, so here is the subject page. Those first two lines basically say table of subjects. Then the next line says Gospel of Mary. Oh, that's not in there, is it? And this right here says Mary and Theban, or Miriam. Then the next three are Gospel of Matthew, Mark, and John. There was no J back then, so Jan. And then it says on line 7, the voyage of 1178 mastered subtly. And what's cool about that, the date, is right here. 2 hooked X's in the numbers 10, which is cool. Hooked X's. And then I don't know what that is, the black enchantment. Where is that? Is that part of the document?
Say it again?
Is the black chant enchantment, is that? We don't have that, do we?
No, we don't have that.
Okay. All right, we don't have it. And then we don't have this one either, the picture of the objects in the tunnel. We don't have that. Oh, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Are you holding out on us?
That's the tunnel between Connacht.
Oh, you're talking about the ARC page. Yeah, okay, got it. Yep, that's right. That's what that is. Okay, good. I'm glad he's here. All right, so now what I want to just wait and tell you is that this is what we're going to talk about here. But before we do that, we're going to talk about another document. And so the Cremona document really is a compilation of documents. There's multiple parts to it. The first part basically is a first-hand narrative of 6 Templar knights who go under the temple in Jerusalem. And it explains how they got in, their journey down into eventually finding what I guess I'll call a tomb, and what they found in there. This is the story of the Templar treasure being found. And it's written by 3 of those knights. One of them is referred to as Hugh, probably Hugh de Payens. So you are about to see and learn what the Templar treasure that was found under the Temple Mount, probably around 1109 to 1118, somewhere in that time period, because this document is not dated. But here we go. So, this has been translated. This is what it actually says. At the 4 corners of a squared floor defined by marble stones set in the floor, forming an oblong square. Does that ring any bells?
Yep.
Rest 4 limestone boxes. They are called bone boxes, and the Ivri, first century Hebrews, buried the bones of their dead in them. There is a locali behind each one, but no bodies are within. Do I have the locali? No, I don't. I have pictures. I got to add them to this presentation. In any case, in the first century, there was a certain group of Hebrews, Jesus and his people, some called them the Essene, had a unique burial practice. And it only went on for about 100 years. After the Romans attacked and dispersed them, that was the end of it. But the way they did this is only the family could process the body of the deceased. And these burial chambers were basically made up of 2 rooms. One was the burial chamber, which was deeper inside the ground. It was actually dug into the limestone in Jerusalem. And then there was a doorway that led into an open area called the antechamber that on the south side would have been open to the sky. So in this area is where they would process the body of the deceased. They would anoint the body with perfumes and oils. Then they would wrap it in a shroud after the ritual was over and bring it into the burial chamber where there would be a bench cut into the rock. They would place the body there, leave it there for 1 to 2 years. Then they would come back and collect the bones and put them inside of this limestone box. It's called an ossuary. And these ossuaries are only big enough so that the 2 largest bones in the body, the femurs, fit in crossed. Then the skull would go in last. And now you know the origin of the skull and crossbones. And then they would take that ossuary and they would go back into the burial chamber where beneath these benches would be tunnels, coquines, and they would put the bone boxes, the ossuaries in there, and that's where you would be buried in perpetuity. So that's what they found. The treasure was in these boxes, covered with lambskin. So here's the first box. Hugh, co-founder, notes it is strange the head is separated not on the spine, but cleanly severed. This man died when his head was cut off with a very sharp axe. The bones show little splintering where the axe slid over them. There is a name, and I read a little Ivry. It is to me that falls the making out of what is written. It is Jan. John the Baptist, Bernard bags the bones. They took them. So one of the things that occurred to me, actually when I became a Mason, and I'm not revealing anything, but all of our lodges are dedicated to the Holy Saints John. In Minnesota, they're dedicated to the Holy Saint John. And my understanding is that actually prior to 1600, our lodges were only dedicated to John the Baptist, only. Which begs the question, why the Baptist and not Jesus? Maybe we're getting a clue right here. So they took the bones. It's interesting that John the Baptist is the initiator, in this case, of Jesus, who is the initiated. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Probably does. In any case, this is the next box. In the box to the left are 12 long clay tubes with writings in one that we break the wax seal on. It is all in Ivry text, and I see that it is the book of God, but in scripto continua. And basically, there's no commas, there's no spaces, there's no punctuation. There's nothing there to tell you which word starts and stops, so you just have to read it. Must have been very difficult. Well, making it most difficult to read. There are others in a strange script too. We take all of them. So they found documents, maps, maybe. Who knows? Third box. Below them and stacked in a pyramid shape are small elongated blocks of gold, each stamped with a seal that Beaumont recognizes as the, I got to fix that, of the Ivry King Solomon. This is a treasure beyond our wildest dreams. This will help with the money-moving plans. Isn't that interesting? What does that mean? Was this plan to found this new nation going back to the 12th century? I agree. The last box is now opened quickly, expecting more gold, but below the sheep hides we find none. Instead, there are 5 devices of metal and of a curious type. And you can read the details about these in the book. There's so much detail in the description that Don and his friend, they actually recreated these devices, right? You actually made them. And 2 of them are used for building, right? 2 are for navigation. And 1 was a cryptex for decoding script. So that's the treasure. So what did that lead to? Well, we know that when the Templars came back, they reported to St. Bernard de Clairvaux, who had well, probably after this, had written the charter for the Knights Templar Order, which was based on the Cistercian charter, the white monks I told you about. And Bernard was really the mastermind behind the success of both of these orders. He wrote the charter in 1128, in January of 1129 in Troyes, France. That's when the Knights Templar became an official order, but they existed long before that. Knights Templar became an official order, but they existed long before that. We can only presume that documents that had been hidden in the land of Antiora. So about 6 decades later or so, there was a mission that was mounted to go to Antiora to get those scrolls and bring them back to Europe. That mission was headed by a Templar knight by the name of Ralph de Suddeley, and he lived in what we now call England. I think it's Warwickshire, somewhere in, is that right? I think that's right. In any case, there's a 3-year voyage that began in Wales. They took 6 ships and 140 men and women. They were led by a priestess named Altamara. Now, on the way to coming over here, they left Wales, and the first place they went to was Denmark. Because Denmark was, I think it was King Valdemar, who was a Templar knight, had a woman in his court that de Sudderley needed to lead them back to the land of Antiora, which begs the question, how would she know how to get there? The only thing that I can think of is that she was probably indigenous, and she had been brought over here and knew how to get back. I mean, we don't know, but that's the only thing I can presume. There was one condition, though. The king said somebody has to marry her before I'll let her go. So Leon, the Spaniard, stepped up and he married her. And I have to say, when you read this story, it's romantic. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but I think he did it for more than just duty. I think he really loved her. That's my personal opinion. But in any case, she led them back. One of the things I found very interesting in this document is when they got to essentially the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, we 20 and 6 were the ones that hiked overland to get to the Temple of the Goddess, where the scrolls were hidden. We 20 and 6 is 2 times 13. 13 is a sacred number to the Templars. It's a sacred number, period. It's a symbol, it's a number that represents the goddess, the sacred feminine, right? And of course, the Templars were arrested, tortured, and burned on Friday the 13th, right? Because the church tried to demonize that number, right? Right. Why? Because they were trying to put you ladies down. That's why they did it. And now today, 13 is not an unlucky number. It's a very lucky number. And that's why they used it. 2 times 13. This is one of the little things of the many things that to me breathes authenticity into this document. Altamar led them to the Temple of the Goddess in the land of Antiora, to a place that's now called Hunter Mountain. And I took this picture on Hunter Mountain. And I'm going to tell you the story about these guys right here and one other guy who was too damn busy to make it, Steve St. Clair. I'm kidding, Steve. He would laugh at that. Don asked us if we would help him. He goes, I need some young legs. Thank you for that, by the way, because I wasn't that young, but I knew Grant had young legs. And so we went up on the mountain because Don had some unfinished business. And after they went up on the mountain, I got to tell them what happened. So when they finally got to the mountain, the temple was run by priestesses, by women. And de Sudderley basically told them why he was there. He was there to recover the scrolls. And the head priestess said, well, you can earn the right by going through a ritual. And this was a 3-day ritual that involved spending 3 nights in 3 different caves, that we have been in those caves. And in the end, that final night, the priestess came to Master de Sudley and offered herself. And he said, I have taken vows of celibacy. And she said, you pass. And he earned the right to get the scrolls. But he didn't get all of them. She said, reach inside this hole and take out what you can. And he pulled out and he got a pretty good hoard, but he didn't get them all. And then eventually there was a battle on the mountain. A warring tribe came and attacked the people of the mountain, and Altamara was killed. And so they burned her body, and they put her remains inside of a wooden box, wooden ossuary, and then the remains were put inside of one of the small caves up on the mountain with offerings and sealed with a large boulder, and then they left. And de Sudderly and his men went down south, and they eventually stayed in one of the islands on the northern end of Long Island, what's now Long Island. They wintered over there, and they built a ship, and then they sailed back home. And eventually de Sudderly reported to the Grand Master named Odon in 1180 in Saborga, Italy, and a Cistercian monk took his deposition, and that is the Cremona document story of a year we remember. That's how we know about this. So you know the story, right? These are the names of the 6 knights. I've highlighted this one for a reason. I want you to remember that name, Lionel de Waldern, Spaniard of Leon. He was the one that married Altamara, and de Sudderly led the group. Well, in a nutshell, what happened is Bill Jackson decoded this document, and then, like any good scientist, quite frankly, he needed something to prove to him that this was worthy of his time, because the story is so fantastic, it's almost unbelievable. So one of the first things he did is he called his buddy Don, because one of the things that happened on the trip over is de Sudderly, they lost one ship off the southern coast of Newfoundland. And actually in the document, the details are incredible as to where it went down, enough so that you could go look for it. And that's what Jackson did, is he dragged you and a couple other guys, right? And they found the ship. They found the ship. And one of the things they did is they pulled up the mast. And the mast was made of 2 pieces of wood that were joined together. And there was a brass strap that tied it together, and then a stone that was wedged in to tighten it. And you guys took the stone. And the Canadian government took the mast, right? Yep. Yep, and the strap. Well, the stone had some interesting symbols carved on it. You'll see in a bit. Well, finding the ship would have motivated me. I'm all in, right? Jackson was all in. Thanks in part to you, Don. Now, what's interesting about this, Don didn't know what the heck was going on. You didn't know what was going on until what, the 90s?
Yeah, well, more than that, actually, until I read the Cremona document, which was 2004.
You really understood what was going on. Really? With friends like that? I'm kidding. Anyway, so what this did is this began a pilgrimage, if you will, for Bill Jackson to find Altamara's tomb, because they knew that it was in the Catskills somewhere. And it took, what, 7 years, 6 years?
71 to 77.
Yeah, 6 years. And on October 11th of 1977, and the whole story's chronicled in there, it's incredible, their journey. And so for years, Jackson would say to Don, Don's not married, so he's got the time. And he said, Don, you want to go hiking up in the mountains? We were talking about it today. He said, yeah, I wanted to get in shape so I could hike the Grand Canyon. And they went up there, and Jackson was slowly but surely cutting pieces of real estate off until they found the landmarks that told them that they were in the right area. And in October 11th of 77, they found the tomb. And I've got more pictures. You can see them in the book. But it's just a small cave. I actually found this cave too. I had to go find it and see if it was there. Not that I didn't believe you, I just didn't believe you. Anyway. But this is a stone here that has some of the offerings. You see that little metal piece right there? That's right there. And it's part of a navigation device, right? Wasn't there a piece of glass in there too?
Yeah, but the glass wasn't actually part of it.
Okay.
It was the base for the thing that's next to it.
Yeah, this piece right here, right? That fits inside there. See that right there? That's an 11-carat uncut diamond.
Damn.
And that thing was eventually sold.
Yeah.
It had 8 owners.
They all died.
And they all died within a year and a half. Right?
Good thing John didn't keep it.
Guess what? Now, I don't care if it's 3 carats now cut or not. I'm not interested. And then that diamond was found inside this little urn here that was wrapped inside of that was wrapped inside of another box or whatever. And this right here is a silver necklace that was made of a special Mayan design, right?
Yeah.
And that was inside this box right here. So these are some of the offerings that they found. Well, at this point, story's over, right? Jackson found what he was looking for. The story was true. And I'm just going to paraphrase this, but basically, he was going to write the book about this story. But what happened is he ran into some awful academics. I've run into them. I know exactly what he experienced. He got to the point where he was so disillusioned, he said, screw it, I'm not going to write a book about the real story. I'm going to write a fictional account of this. So he started to do that. And then he realized that he was sick. He says in there, you'll read it yourself, he had arterial sclerosis. He knew he was dying, so that was the end of that book. And then he sold the document in '94. And this is an interesting story. The guy he sold it to at the Vatican was a guy named Paul Marcinkus. Does that name ring a bell?
Oh, yeah. The banker?
Yes. The P2 scandal, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You remember Pope John Paul I, who died after 33 days? Well, the only guy that had a key to his room was Paul Marcinkus. He's the one that probably killed him. You ever see the Da Vinci Code movie?
Yeah.
You remember the albino monk, the bad guy? Silas.
Yeah.
He was patterned after Paul Marcinkus. He was a badass for the church. And what happened to him, Don?
He spent 4 years in jail, 4 months in jail as a result of the scandal.
P2.
The Vatican National Bank was laundering money for the Median cartel. And then he retired and he moved to Sun City,
Arizona.
And he was found hanging from the ceiling beams of his house one day.
Dead.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. Let that be a lesson to you, okay? Don't mess with the Italian banking system.
Scott, wasn't Martinez,
Marcinkus?
yes, purported to have some ties also into the mafia?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The Vatican and the mafia?
Yeah.
Same thing, isn't it? Sorry. That was inappropriate. My bad. But yeah. I mean, it's documented. Yeah.
I've seen stories about
Right.
that.
Were you the one that found Jackson's name?
Yes.
Yes. What was the book again?
There was a book written about the Vatican banking scandal, a bunch of Italian sources, and in which Marcinkus was implicated in the assassination of Pope John Paul I. One of the sources, William Jackson, the only Caucasian name in the entire book.
Yeah. That's.
Also a program on TV about that not too long ago.
Yeah, it's an interesting story for sure. And one of the things that we know that the Vatican tried to do was to pin the murder on the Freemasonry. That's why he was killed after 33 days. That's one of the things. There's more to that story, but it's well documented what happened. So at that point, you would think the story's over, right? Well, it was only just beginning for us, because I met Don, I met you in a hotel. We were at a conference, a NERA conference, and actually you and I both went into the room and said, you and Zena said, we'd like to show you some artifacts. And he pulled out this brass seal. And then he had all the, he had the inserts on it, and I'm looking at this thing, and you're trying to, and at that time, he didn't really understand the whole story either. But a couple years later, he contacted us, and he said, hey, I'd like your help. Would you go up on the mountain with me? There's some things that I want to look for. And so I said, okay, and I talked my son into it, and talked Dave into it, we talked Steve into it, and we went up on the mountain. And what happened was Don had this map, and at the time, you never told us where you got it, but this has been
He wouldn't even show it to us.
He wouldn't. Well, he showed it to us, but we didn't get to study it really. And these are some notes that are B.J. Bill Jackson, 1984, from the one remaining tube found in the cave. Well, what he didn't tell us is that they also found another clay tube inside of Altamara's tomb, sealed with beeswax, that had this in it. And so this is a kind of a funny looking compass and square. This is a creek right here, and these points represent points on the mountain. So we go up on the mountain, and it turns out that that stream is running right here, actually right below my feet here. This point right here is Table Rock, right there. And now it's hard to tell, but this mountain is literally like this. Am I kidding? He's still disgusted. Anyway,
It was raining, too.
it was raining. It was slippery, and it was, I mean, it really was treacherous. But when you stand on top of it, and it's probably about a 12-foot square flat surface, I mean, you could survey off this point, but the point is you could see every point from up on this vantage point down below us, right here. So these are some of the things that are marked on the map. The first thing at the bottom of that square is a delta symbol. And when you climb up there, it's on a big boulder. And of course, a delta symbol is pretty sacred, isn't it? It's a symbol of deity in Freemasonry. And that's me standing next to it right there on the way up. There's Grant. There's David, there's Don, and they're rubbing off a Theban B right here on this block, which is on the upper left of the square. And that is the goose carving right there. And you said you hadn't seen that since, remember you were all excited. I haven't seen that in 30 years or whatever it was.
Yeah, until 1976 or so.
77, yeah, okay. And so Don's pretty happy. And that's over on the other side of the square. And so from the delta to the B, we strung a tape measure. And that's Steve St. Clair, the guy that's not here. It's good, his face is, he'd probably be happy about that. And then I put, we did is we calculated the relative distance between the ends of the square and where the compass crossed. And that point, I put a flag in the ground right about here. And then Grant and I and Steve took off up the mountain to go see if we could find more of the temple. And Don and David stayed behind, and they dug where I put the flag in the ground. And they went down about 2.5 feet, and they found this. Now, these are Roman numbers, right? And this is Latin in camera, which is actually still used in law, right?
In secret, yes.
Yeah. In tomb, in chamber, in secret. I think when you meet with the judge, you call it in camera, in chamber, in secret. And then, if you look at these numbers, we all figured it out pretty quick that this is probably a latitude and a longitude. And then you flip the stone over and you have these two symbols. This is the Phoenician goddess Tanith, Remember that stone that was on the ship that tied in the brass strap to tighten? These two symbols were carved on that stone the same way. Right, Don? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did find the right ship. Now, what's interesting is you notice how these lines are solid and continuous, whereas this wilted rose down here, which is symbolic of the house of Migdol. And there's a dot in the belly right there. Pregnant, maybe? I don't know. I don't know. But it's interesting, this is carved with a pecking technique, whereas that's straight lines. And I don't really know what that means, but that's just an observation. Well, what the heck? What would be the first thing you guys would do?
Find out where the longitude and latitude is.
Hell yeah. We got on that computer. We got on Google Earth. And boom. Right up in the middle of nowhere in Canada. And we're like, what the heck? And then it dawned on us, wait a minute. The Templars didn't use Greenwich back then. They used Paris, because that's where their headquarters was. So we recalculated it. Boom. Bingo. Old Montreal, Canada. So what did we do, Dave?
Road trip.
How fast did we get up there? We rode. We didn't even shower. We just zipped right up there. It wasn't pretty, but we didn't care at that point. Anyway, okay, so before I talk about Montreal, I got to get serious with you for just a second. I'm serious. This next part is a little sensitive for some people. And I just want people to know that I'm not here to try to offend anybody. But what I'm about to share will be bothersome to some people of a particular faith. I'm not here to do that. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this mystery. So this is all in the spirit of science. So if anybody gets offended from here on, it's your own fault. Okay? Are we good? Okay, here we go. All right. I do that seriously because I've had people walk out and were offended. So, and I don't want to do that. That's not my point. Okay, so the colors of Mary Magdalene in art are yellow and green. Green for her Celtic roots, heritage, and orange for the region of France that she disappeared into after the crucifixion, where she lived her life and died. So now you know that, okay? So when you look at art, you will know who is who. There she is. This is in a Roman Catholic church, stations at one of the Stations of the Cross, and there she is, right? When we went to Montreal to investigate why is that important, why is this taking us up there, there is a basilica there dedicated to Notre Dame, Our Lady, and it's beautiful. And I'll never forget when we walked in those doors in this beautiful church, we turned to the left and there was this painting. And it was probably 12 feet tall by 8 feet wide. And look at the colors. And look at the M sign. And look at the orange necklace. Doesn't that look like a little girl? It's supposed to be a little boy, but I don't know if I see that. I think I see it, but I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, this is in Canada, okay? So the other thing that we saw in Canada is absolutely incredible in this Notre Dame Basilica. And this is the pulpit, right? It was carved in wood. This thing is beautiful. And at the top, where the preach is delivering his message, you have this glory up here, right? And you have the delta symbol, which is a symbol of God, deity. And oftentimes you will see 4 Hebrew letters inside of it. It's called the Tetragrammaton. Yod, He, Vav, He. Well, when I looked at that, or when we looked at that, we assumed that's what it was. But that's not what it was. And just to show you, when I was in Sweden several years ago, this is an example, Church of Mary Magdalene, of the Tetragrammaton that I'm talking about. Yod, He, Vav, He. But that's not what's in this church in Canada. This is what's in there. He, Vav, He. And in Latin, those letters translate to Eve, the goddess. The Templars' true ideology. They venerated the feminine aspects of the Godhead. So that's crazy. I have never seen that anywhere else except in that church. And we saw another one in that church. There was two. So, let's go back to the document. This is from the Cremona document again. This is a list of the scrolls that de Sutterly got. I want to point out this one in particular. Let's go back and put it in English. A contract of marriage with Yeshua ben Yosef and Miriam a Hasmonia at Cana. That's Jesus and Mary Magdalene. A marriage document that was hidden over here. Well, now you know why they wanted to get it out of Dodge. That's just one of them.
Canaan was where the Phoenicians are from. Phoenicians.
The Phoenicians from Cana.
Worship the god of Canaan.
So that's where she was from.
And in Spain.
So, this is what the We Remember says. We have returned with the 9 tubes, many having several scrolls within, but the marriage document of Grandmaster Odin's state is valued beyond measure. And it talks about what's right there. This, by the way, this scene right here was in Bon Secours Church, which is right next to the Basilica in Montreal. He's crowning his queen.
Do you connect this with the wedding feast of Cana and the first miracle of Christ?
I'm not the person to ask there,
That's
but I think so.
And that's why Mary was presiding at that wedding, because it was your son's wedding.
Now, since I've been doing the show and doing this research, I was contacted by a Freemason who was a retired naval officer. He was like a 2-star, the equivalent of a 2-star general, whatever that is, the equivalency in the Navy. And what he did while he was serving was to captain the ship and go out to different parts of the world to collect artifacts, remains, other controversial stuff, quietly under the radar, and bring it back to America, where it would be put inside storage facilities, not to be seen again. And he sent me a lot of crazy stuff that I don't even know how to follow up on. But he also sent me this. And this was a letter written by another Mason who was a Monsignor with the Vatican at the time. This was 2009. Thank you for contacting me with your question. First, let me say it is true. The Catholicus Mysticus is, in fact, in our Vatican archives in storage. It is true that the papyrus in question was delivered to the Christian authorities in 220 AD, and that it details the reported event, number 1. Mary Magdala had secretly wed our Lord and Savior. 2, she had his child, a girl. Her name was Sarah. I'm saying that, not him. And 3, to avoid possible persecution of the child, she traveled with trusted friends to what later became known in Europe, as Europe, reportedly France. The papyrus was delivered by members of the Church of Galatia. I will neither state that the papyrus is true or false, and that I can assure you that the Holy Roman Catholic Church will never allow the document to be seen by the public. That's a surprise, right? So, with all of that in mind, I'm going to reveal a secret to you guys. You know who Leonardo da Vinci was, right? He was the Grand Master of a particular order during his lifetime, and he had a lot of secrets. In 1483, the Church of the Immaculate Conception commissioned him to do a painting called The Virgin on the Rocks. And this is that painting. And when he presented it to the church, they basically said, screw you, do it again. Now my question to you is, what did they object to? You have all you need to figure this out. Oh, maybe the color's over here. That's a problem. Now, for those of you that don't understand, this is supposed to be, you know, the Virgin Mary and her child Jesus and cousin, I guess, John the Baptist, right? Well, if that's Mary Magdalene, that can't be Jesus and John the Baptist, can it? Well, if it's not them, then who are they? I'm not telling you. You have to figure it out on your own. Anybody?
John the Evangelist?
No? That's a little boy. That is her son with Jesus. His name was Judah. Well, who's that? Who's she pointing to? His name is Jose. That's her child that she had with John the Baptist, who she was married to before she married Jesus. Remember, he got beheaded?
And they were cousins, so that could work.
Yeah. He was obligated to do that, right?
How could they be the same age?
Pardon me?
How could the two children be approximately the same age?
Well, they're not. This one's older. This is younger.
They're Irish twins.
They're not the same age. Because there's many other images of this, and you see it, and it's quite clear they're not the same age. So there's something else. She's pointing to John the Baptist's child, right? Why is she doing that? Because he's the initiated one. Go like this. Make this hand gesture that she's doing. Tighten those 3 fingers. Now rotate it 90 degrees. Compass and square, right? The initiated one, right here. So, he had to do it again. And 2 years later, he presented this painting. What's different?
No orange.
No hand gesture.
Got to get rid of her, right? Got to get her out of the picture. So they put angels. Made her an archangel or whatever. And now you've got halos here. This is Jesus and John the Baptist. He's got his cross right here like a crozier. And they have halos on. She doesn't have a halo. And there's more going on in the background, but this is what's relevant. What else is missing? This. This is hanging in the Church of the Immaculate Conception to this day. This is hanging in the Louvre. I've seen that one. I haven't seen the other one. That's pretty cool, huh? That's our little secret. Okay. Now, so, this story's over, right? We go up on the mountain, we find the stone, and it led to all of this. So for 9 years, I've been thinking, what the hell is that stone? Where did Stott, and you never told us where he got the map either, which I was a little upset with you for a while. I'm like, come on. And then we got back together. I was kidding. I wasn't mad at him. I was disappointed because I didn't understand. And I don't like not knowing what's going on. That's not in my DNA. So about 2.5 years ago now, Don emailed me, and my wife Janet and I were driving up to Nova Scotia. I'll never forget it. And I checked my phone while she was driving. And there was an email from Don. And in there was this photograph. And I'm like, Don, what is this? What is this? Robert Cavalier de La Salle. We have a high school in Minnesota called De La Salle High School, named after this guy. He was a French explorer who's given credit for discovering the southern half of the Mississippi. What are you talking about? Indigenous people used it for thousands of years. You didn't discover anything. But anyway,
That's how you really feel.
I'm just saying, it's just nonsense. Anyway, so this letter, this photograph of this letter came from Melissa Jackson, Bill Jackson's daughter. Bill died in 2000, and then his daughter moved over to Ireland. And she lived there for many years, and then she was moving in 2017 to Scotland, right, to be with her brother Mark, right? And she was going through her stuff, and she found this envelope that her dad had left her, and it said, if anything happens to me, give it to Don. Well, he got it 17 years late. But, so he sends this to me. I go, what do you think of that? I go, well, what do you think I think? Open it up. And he goes, well, it's not mine, it's Melissa's, and we've got a couple of people we got to go through. I said, well, see if they'll sell it. So he got back to her, and by the time she got back to us, they had already sold it. But Melissa, knowing how Don, this is part of his life story too, she didn't know about me, but she said, she contacted you later and said, well, we sold the letter, but as part of the deal, they agreed to let me open it, to take photographs to send to you guys. So that's the next best thing, right? Because we offered to buy it. It was already sold by the time we got the correspondence back. This is De La Salle. And here are the pictures. What's cool, this part right here, when you open it up and you pull the first flap, this is the first thing you see. It says, after reading, set this message to flame. See the date? 1656. May 8th of 1656. You know that church in Montreal? The Sulpicians founded a seminary there in about 1642, just a few years before this was written. Here's the letter. Robert, this day is our last in the temple of the goddess, on the mountain of Manitou. Flatlanders and Hollanders encroach daily, and the people are much afraid. I have set a message in stone. That's our stone. And one in the cave of the priestess Altamara. That's that compass and square map. Now we know. To tell of our passing. I go be with the people of my mother to the south by water, have gotten a missive from Father Ollier to go to his place of the Sulpicians to the north, beyond the great North River. 26 soldiers and Imogene, 26, 2 times 13. And the faithful also go north. I send 4 boxes, bound boxes with 13 scrolls of Adoniram, 26 scrolls of 6 of Pharaoh's scrolls, 129 of Euripides, 9 of the Kohan, 16 of ours, 8 of Yeshua, and the history of the Celts. I have also set the book of Wars of the Lord, all go north. But here's the best part. Signed by M. Lionel de Waldern, the 21st. Remember those 6 knights? The one I highlighted? His name is Lionel de Waldern. This is his descendant 21 generations later. Yes, I've done the math. If you go about 25 years, it's a little under 500 years later. Wow. Now we know.
Do you know if that's the Brock Libre, the lost history of Ireland?
I don't.
Scotland?
You mean the history of the Celts?
Yes.
I don't know. This is all we have. This is what we got.
Because the history of the Druids was taken when St. Patrick came.
Mm-hmm.
The High Druid's sons took it, and they went on missions to Amaranth, the Merovingians.
Yeah.
And then they went to Scotland as well. It was called Green Seas. And which it was like a meditation that they would go into caves. And it disappears, and it doesn't come back until the lowland Scottish invasion.
So this makes sense, doesn't it?
Actually,
It's quite amazing, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just.
Email that I sent to you.
I will. I promise. I promise. I promise. So there's one more little surprise, though. And this, by the way, is Father Ollier. I took this picture when we were filming an episode at Saint-Sulpice Church in France. And, sometimes I'll take pictures. You never know when you might need it. Oh, boy, I'm glad I do that, because there it is. And then that's a portrait of Ollier. And he's the one that sent De La Salle over to Montreal. And how De La Salle fits into this, I don't know. What's interesting is that letter and the date, Montreal. And how De La Salle fits into this, I don't know. What's interesting is that letter and the date. He was only 13 years old. These are more questions. But now it's open. Oh, when Melissa opened up the letter, none of us knew that there was a piece of paper inside of it. She sold that to us for $100 because the buyer didn't know about it and she felt bad, so she sold it to us. I love her, by the way. I love her. So this is what it says. Sit luxit fruit. Let there be light, and there was light. Veritas. All truth prevail. See the little fish symbol? That's a very important esoteric symbol. It's like a watermark of authenticity to those in the know. LDW, 21st, with a hooked X. Boom! I love that. And we know all these symbols, don't we, guys?
Yep.
Every one of them. So the big question is, where are those scrolls now?
Don?
Well, I have an answer for you. Stay tuned. We're not done yet. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Thank you. That was amazing.
That's pretty fun.
All right, everybody go out and tell your Catholic friends about that. No, don't do that. Try it doesn't go
I'm in the belly of the beast. Oh, no.
But thank you so much
Yeah,
for
you're
being
welcome.
here, to have this journey and you share your journey with us.
Well, to have the guys that were with me on this piece. And you know what? Seriously, we owe really a big debt of gratitude to Don for hanging on to this stuff, for sharing it with us, for helping us. And I want to just say one other thing. I do have books for sale if you're interested. But Don also has a few books that he put together, because one of the things I said to him, because part of the, and this is, I haven't told you this, but a lot of these documents, Bill Jackson disseminated to his buddies that were part of the Spartan group. And we figured out today why he did that. I go, why did he go through all this crazy getting this stuff to you via your friends that have passed on? And their estates leaving this stuff to Don. Well, he told us the reason. And that is because when Jackson sold the document to the Vatican, to Marcinkus, a known murderer, right? He wanted to be able to say, I don't have the stuff that you didn't get. But the church apparently didn't even know there were pieces missing, because those pieces ended up with him. And so he had this, and if anyone from the Vatican came back, which your thesis is, it makes a lot of sense to me, is first of all, I don't have it. And by the way, if you want it, that'll be another 10 grand. It makes sense to me. How many more of you are left?
4.
4 left? Okay, well, hey, there's more coming, I'm sure. But anyway, yeah, Dave.
So first of all, amazing presentation.
Thank you.
And I've lived this, so I'm
Yeah.
blown away by it. One thing I just want to highlight, and that is...
Stand up so they can hear you.
One of the big takeaways for me on this is the fact that Jackson sold this to a high-ranking Vatican official. The question has always been, since we first went up the hill with Don that time, is this true or is it not?
Right.
For me, when I learned that a high-ranking Vatican official not only bought this scroll, also climbed up and found some of the things on the mountain, right? We think he found some stuff.
Well, I'm not sure. Well, no, I don't think the Vatican... Well, you know what? We don't know who those guys were. We don't know who they were.
Wasn't Marcinkus up on the hill? Doesn't one of the... Jackson's friend wrote this diary entry talking about how Marcinkus was on the hill.
No, that was Barry Fell.
No, different.
I don't think so.
I think, well, I remember reading
No,
something.
that was Mary Fell.
I remember that, but wasn't Marcinkus also on the mountain looking for things at one point?
Not that I know of.
Even not, the fact that he bought the document, who would know better about the possible authenticity of this than a high-ranking Vatican official? And when they step in and basically strong-arm Jackson into selling to them, that tells me something's going on there.
Well, and beyond that, when Jackson first bought the document from the Benvenuto family, they were about to donate that with some other materials to the Vatican. So it's possible that maybe, and so if he told them that, then they knew that he had something they were going to sell him. They may have known exactly what it was. They didn't get it. They were pissed. And when they had another opportunity to get it, they jumped on it.
Right, but if the 1179 journey never happened, the Vatican would have known. That never happened.
Yeah.
This whole thing is ridiculous. The fact that they cared, to me, tells us it did. Just really important corroboration.
Yeah, I think it is.
My lawyer friend. You two are both.
I have a question, though.
Yeah.
This
Go ahead.
seems like a search for truth, and it's
100%.
important as a search for truth, but for what purpose?
Well,
And maybe truth is its own purpose, but
you want to know why I'm doing this?
Sure.
Okay, there's a lot of reasons. One is I just don't like BS. I want to know the truth. I've spent the last 20 years of my life, it started with the Kensington Runestone and has led me to here, giving a presentation like this. I never dreamed I would have any interest in any of this stuff, let alone write 4 books on it. But part of my journey has been the same journey that Jackson went on. When I did my work on the runestone, I didn't know what it was. I had no idea about the history. I didn't really care. I do my forensic work, I write the report, I send him a bill, and on I go. When I wrote that report, and I said this thing was authentic based on the weathering, the rock told me it was real. The rock told me. Hang on. And so I delivered my results, and I got blasted. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I thought you guys would be happy. No, they didn't like the results.
Why?
So, because it changes the narrative. That the archaeologists, that the church, certain political entities have been lying to us about ever since. As far back as you want to go. I don't live in that world. My world is you get to the bottom of it, you tell the people the truth. Sometimes you get news you don't like. Tough op. Deal with it.
what do you think the strongest argument is that the Kensington Runestone is not authentic?
There isn't one.
But
And
for years there was one.
Well, right, because of misguided academics that didn't understand what they were doing. And at the end of the day, here's what they did. They've been trying to tell the Kensington Runestone what it's supposed to be, instead of letting the rock tell them what it is. That's what it boils down to. And it's all about problems of the human condition. And it's BS. Because I can't even tell you. So I know what Bill Jackson went through. I've lived it. And you know what it does? It pisses you off. And in my case, I just said, screw it, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And we are finally getting to the bottom of this well. The runestone's real. Absolutely. It says right on it, acquisition business, taking up land. It's a land claim, for God's sakes. And the Templars carved it. And there's a million reasons why they carved it. But if you just follow the evidence trail, it takes you right to the Cistercians and the Templars and nobody else. And you guys know as lawyers, right? And I know as a forensic person, when you've got the truth, everything fits as it must. But getting back to what you said, where's the evidence to support that it's not real? This is the dirty little secret in forensics that people don't understand. When you've got all this evidence in multiple disciplines that all converge at the same place, in this case authenticity, how the hell can there be evidence to support the contrary? It can't exist, and it doesn't exist. And it's time the world accepted this thing for what it is, because it's our history. The founding of this country didn't start in 1776, it started in 1362. Print that. Sorry.
That's why I asked the question.
I know, and I love you for it, man. You gave me a pulpit, and I go at this high on it. Any other questions?
Why 1362? Sorry.
Because that's the date carved on the Kensington Runestone. And they encoded the same date within the inscription to protect the date that's carved on it that could be altered with another line, say in 1363, 14, can't do it. Protected it with a medieval Easter table dating code that's embedded within the inscription. Brilliant. That runestone has so, and the reason I call this book the Cryptic Code is because the final piece to this mystery of the runestone, the last thing, didn't come to me until I became a Mason. So the last thing didn't come to me until I became a Mason. I did not become a Mason until you can say to yourself that you don't know it all. Until you can truly be humble and ready to receive, right? Naked, divested, right? That took me till I was in my 50s. And it was once I was initiated and I understood these principles that I could look at the runestone inscription in a new light. And all of a sudden, I get it now. And it also explains why the academics will never solve it. Because they already know everything, right? I haven't met one of these academics that I deal with relative to the runestone, and I don't mean all of them, and I'm not trying to put them all in one basket, because they're not all in one basket. But the ones I've dealt with, they will never figure it out, because they will never admit that they don't know. It's just the way it is. Yes, sir?
Do you think that any of the scrolls found under the temple or in the Catskills could be buried on Oak Island?
Nope. I know they're not there. You know what? I'll just say this. I'm writing another book right now. There's a reason that this is out there anyway, but I published this from my perspective first. There's 2 more sets of documents that I'm writing about right now that will, no offense, Don, will blow this story away. It's the continuation of this story. The other reason I published this first is because chronologically in history, this came first. But the next story deals with Oak Island. Well, it doesn't deal with Oak Island. And let me ask you a question. The brothers are looking for what? They're looking for the Templar treasure, right? That's what they want to find. That's what they think is there. Do you think that the Templars would ever put all their eggs in one basket?
No, but I'm just curious why somebody would spend that much time and effort hundreds of years
Because they're getting paid.
What would be so important?
Did it ever occur to anybody that it might be a decoy site? If so,
Certainly possible.
it is worked masterfully right to this day. I can absolutely guarantee you that we know a lot about treasures, including this stuff, and they aren't there. And after 7 years, if they've proven anything, that's what they've proven. There's nothing there. I'm just being honest. And I get asked about it every day. I can tell you this, I've been asked 4 times to be on that show. Twice by the president of Prometheus. Remember, Kevin? If he ever sees this, he knows. And I said no. And the reason is I care about my reputation. And I will tell you this, that show is making a lot of money.
Like I said,
Now, I can always use a payday, but I won't go on that show. That's all I'll say.
On those lines, will you comment tonight on the possibility that pre-Revolutionary War, there was a treasure up in Nova Scotia that may have been taken?
Absolutely.
Want to give more detail on that?
Well, what I can tell you is in these documents that we're working on right now, that I've been vetting for 4 years now, almost 4 years, they detail treasures coming over here, buried in multiple places, not on Oak Island. The latitudes, the details, we know exactly where they are.
Nova Scotia, though.
In Nova Scotia, well, not all of them,
Yeah,
not all of them, but most of them. But we also know that later on in the story, those treasures were recovered and used in part to fund the Revolutionary War, which you heard on Oak Island. You know where they got that information? From me. When we pitched that story. But they won't do the story or this story because they don't want to They don't want to do anything to hurt their sacred cow, which is Oak Island. But I don't care. I'm patient. The story's going to come out. And it's the best story I've ever heard. This story's great, isn't it? Wait to hear the rest of this. And the second set of documents, the third set in this series, was written by a historical figure that every Freemason in the world, well, I should say certainly in this country, knows. You guys ever heard of a guy named Albert Pike?
Yep.
What if I told you that there were 27 letters written by Brother Pike that were discovered 6 years ago that the world has never seen? What if I told you he talked about the Templars in America? Brother Pike. It's unbelievable. Stay tuned. I'm not kidding. It's like, poof. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
The Table Rock on Hunter Mountain, is that a natural formation?
I'm sorry?
Is that a natural formation?
The mountain?
The Table Rock?
I think so. But, you know, that's a really good question, because when you go up there, it's actually like a pinnacle of rock. It almost looks like somebody stacked, you know, a bunch of decks of playing cards. You know, they're in slabs like this. But I think it is natural, because there's a lot of other really cool rock formations up there. I mean, just getting up to that point, it's a good hike up there. I mean, it's incredible. It's geologically, I'm in heaven. I love it. But I think it probably is, yeah. Could they have altered a little bit? I'm not sure. I think it's natural. Anyone else? Oh, the cameraman speaks.
Like funded by anything, or was that just like like when you went to the church?
When we went up there?
Yeah, did you tell anyone like you're going to the church, or are you guys just going with the general public like looking at it?
You mean up in Montreal?
Yeah.
We're not telling anyone what we're doing. I put on my rosary, man. I walked in there and no, we didn't tell anyone, did we? No, we just fly under the radar, and this isn't, none of this is part of the show. We just did this in real life. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Well, thank you very much. If anybody's interested, we have books back there. Remember, Don has his book. If I were you, seriously, if you had to choose between my book or his book, if you're buying a book, buy his. I'm serious. My book, I know I'm going to sell mine eventually. He only brought, what, 8 books?
8 books.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Come on up, buddy.
To all the brothers in the 14th Masonic District, I want to thank you for sharing this story with us. And I can't speak for everyone here, but I can speak for many of you because I know you. And to answer your question, what's the point? Why do we want to know the truth? Well, for me and for many of us, it's because we can't know where we're going if we don't know the truth about where we've been.
Exactly.
And so I think that's why it's really important to us to find the truth and to have people like this, and like Scott and David Brody, who lives locally and comes and speaks often. So talk to these guys. Please come with us to the Newport Tower on Saturday morning, 9 a.m. for the Keystone Illumination. Many of these people will be there. There'll be more great conversations, lots of fun weirdos. All kinds of stuff.
True that.
And just to wrap this up, so the weird coincidences continue. Not only is it Scott's birthday, but he was actually born at the exact time that the Keystone illuminates. Wow. So there's just all these kind of strange mysteries that continue to follow the story. It's a lot of fun to be around these people and to search for truth of who we are and where we came from.
Thanks,
so
brother.
thank you. And now
Thank
go
you,
buy
guys.
some butter.
All right.